enchanted lullaby.
There is no truth until you decide what truth is, and each person should find that truth out for his or herself.
Greetings, Medicine family. This is part 2.1 of going deeper into government structures, processes, and so on and so forth. And for this episode, we'll be focusing on the military, specifically the Army. I was going to make it a long, pretty much 3 to 5 hour, just long segment just to give it all to you at once. But I wanted to make it more digestible. So I broke it up. So you're going to get a few part twos that will be released to you over the next few days, going over the Army, Navy, Marines, and Air Force. Okay. So anyhow, I hope that you enjoy, and let's just get straight into it.
Okay, so we did the U.S. Army, and my section was who. So to begin with, who is the U.S. Army? The U.S. Army is a militia force that has been fighting for the United States since before the U.S. gained its independence as a nation. At first, it wasn't named the U.S. Army. The U.S. Army came into existence a little later down the line, but that will be explained later on. So so in the beginning, who created the U.S. Army, it was many men and women who came together in small communities, such as today, and gathered upon one another from, colony to colony, city to city, state to state. Out of those 13 colonies, well, not really out of those 13 colonies, out of those 12 colonies, there was one colony in Pennsylvania that didn't require its people to fight in wars, because at the time it was settled by Quakers. So the picture that you're seeing right now is a picture of the individual that was a part of the Quaker colony, and you see where the name Quaker Oats came from. So it's kind of resemblance to one another. And Pennsylvania was settled by Quakers, and that was the only colony that didn't fight in the army at that time. This was around 1700s, and during these times they was fighting Native Americans, and as time went on, they went to fight British troops and other troops as well that had control of these colonies. So who was in the army? The army, well, to be enlisted into the army, you must be 18 to 35 years old, 17 with parental consent. You must be a U.S. citizen or a resident alien. The army consists of a number of armies, corps, divisions, brigades, a whole bunch of ranks, and they do full spectrum operations around the world. You see, the gender is 84% male, 15% female. Ethnicity is 32%, are from a minority. 16% are from Hispanic or Latino. To continue, who controls the army? So who controls the army? The presidential command is over the U.S. Armed Forces, and it is established in Article 2 in the Constitution, whereby the president is named as the commander-in-chief of the army. The Secretary of Defense position of the command and authority over the military is second only to that of the President of the United States, who is the commander-in-chief. The Secretary of Defense being Lloyd J. Austin III. So at the current moment right now, the commander-in-chief, who is the commander-in-chief who commands the army, is seated next to Lloyd J. Austin III, who is the Secretary of Defense. And both of these individuals work together to ensure that the army is combative and responsive. So who funds the army? So in an article published by the Department of Defense, well, to begin with, the United States House Committee on Appropriations is a committee of the United States House of Representatives that is responsible for passing appropriation bills along with its Senate counterpart. The bills passed by the Appropriations Committee regulate expenditures of money by the government of the United States. As such, it is one of the most powerful committees, and its members are seen as influential. They make the key decisions about the work of their committees when their committees meet, which bills they will consider, and for how long. The constitutional basis for this committee, for the Appropriations Committee, comes from Article 1, Section 9, Clause 7 in the United States Constitution, which says, "No money shall be drawn from the Treasury, but in consequence of appropriations made by law, and a regular statement and account of receipts and expenditures of all public money shall be published from time to time." Now, if you go into the Department of Defense website, they'll show you certain contracts and um certain articles that shows where the House passes its bills and how much money that the Department of Defense gets. So the Committee on Appropriations, this committee who funds the Army, was created on December 11th, 1865, when the U.S. House of Representatives separated the task of the Committee on Ways and Means into three parts. The passage of legislation affecting taxes remained with the Ways and Means. The power to regulate banking was transferred to the Committee on Banking and Commerce, and the power to appropriate money to control federal purse strings was given to the newly created Appropriations Committee. The United States Constitution requires that all bills regarding taxation must originate in the House of Representatives. The House rules dictate that all bills regarding taxation must pass through Ways and Means. The Committee on Ways and Means is the chief tax writing committee of the United States House of Representatives. And to continue, says the root of appropriations committee's power is the ability to distribute funds. And thus, as the United States federal budget has risen, so has the power of the Appropriations Committee. The first federal budget of the United States in 1789 was for $639,000. And in an article published by the Department of Defense News, Secretary of Defense Lloyd J. Austin III told the House of Appropriations Defense Subcommittee, "The fiscal 2023 defense budget request was built on the bones of the new National Defense Strategy, and the request is adequate for today's military and ensures the military remains strong in the future." The National Defense Strategy is basically a resolution that the committees come up with to regulate how the U.S. Armed Forces will maintain their power. So to the left, we have Betty McCollum, who's the chairwoman of the committee, the Appropriations Committee, and the current Congress, well, what they call right now, what she's a part of, is the 117th Congress. Now we go to who creates the weapons. In 1929, Boeing Airplane and Transport Corporation teamed up with Pratt and Whitney to form the United Aircraft and Transportation Corporation. This is a large firm uniting business interests in aviation airplanes to serve all airplane markets that isn't civilians use, like regular day-to-day flights, and military use too. During World War II, United Aircraft ranked sixth among United States corporations in the value of wartime production contracts. In June 2019, United Technologies announced the intention to merge with the Raytheon Company. The combined company, valued at more than $100 billion after planned spin-offs, would be the world's second largest aerospace and defense company by sales, behind Boeing. Raytheon Corporation is an American multinational aerospace and defense conglomerate headquartered in Arlington, Virginia. It is one of the largest aerospace and defense manufacturers in the world by revenue and market capitalization. Lloyd J. Austin III also holds a position in Raytheon Technology or Raytheon Corporations, as well as being the Secretary of Defense. And the slide we have here shows contracts, defense contracts from December 7th, 2022 to December 19th, 2022. It says that Pfizer was awarded a contract. A couple other companies in North Carolina, Lockheed Martin in Florida, was awarded a $95 million contract for the modernized target acquisition, which is night sight vision systems. There's a bunch of weapons that they manufacture. And that'll be my part. Next, we have Chris.
All right. Yeah, start up my part. So you could go to the next slide, Andrew. All right. So I started off with what are the different ranking systems? So we start off. We have the pictures you're looking at now. These are the enlisted ranks, and basically the enlisted ranks are the backbone of the Army. They have specific specialties within an Army unit, perform specific job functions, have the knowledge that ensure the success of their unit's current mission within the Army. The highest rank in the enlisted ranks is the Sergeant Major of the Army. There can only be one. The individual in that position is Michael A. Grinston. So on the enlisted ranks, you basically go from private all the way up to Sergeant Major of the Army. So you go from private class in that route. And then, so the next slide, oh yeah, we good. You have the warrant officer ranks. The warrant officer ranks are the adaptive combat leaders, trainers, and advisors through progressive levels of expertise and assignments, training, and education. The warrant officer administrator manages, maintains, operatives, and integrates systems and equipment across a full spectrum of operations. The warrant officer has a technical specialty. Some examples are culinary specialist, animal care specialist, and watercraft operator. So if you see, you got warrant officer 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5 is the highest for the warrant officer rank, and the one who's at that position now is Sam Negarapo. All right, so now I'm going to go over the commissioned officer ranks. All right, so the commissioned officer ranks are the managers, problem solvers, key influencers, and planners who lead enlisted soldiers in all situations. They plan missions, give orders, and assign soldiers tasks. The highest ranking officer level is the general of the Army. This is the single highest rank in the Army. We currently do not have a general army. That position is reserved when the country is actively in war. The next spot is the general. This is a 4-star general rank, and the highest attainable by an officer besides the wartime only general of the Army rank. And the Army has a maximum of 7 4-star generals at any one time. 7 of these slots for permanently, like the Army Chief of Staff, so a 4-star general. A general typically has over 30 years of Army experience and commands or operations taking place within their geographical area. Hold on, don't switch yet. So one thing that I found interesting between the enlisted ranks, the warrant officer ranks, and the commissioned officer ranks. So the enlisted ranks, basically to get that spot, you basically just go to high school, get a GED or get your diploma, and you can become an enlisted officer. And with the warrant officer ranks, you have basically it's like you have a trade, right? You have a specific ability that you can do, and then and you have your college degree, so you can become a warrant officer. And then with the commissioned officer ranks, those are the people who don't went to college. As they further and further up your education, you could go up in level. So it's interesting. You could be an enlisted officer. Say for example, the Sergeant Major of the Army, Michael A. Grinston, is technically under, let's say, a level 1 second lieutenant. I mean, obviously, the Sergeant Major of the Army, he has connections, he has people. But I just find it interesting how they broke it down to whereas the college educated people are up top, and the trade people are in the middle, and then the enlisted ranks. People just with high school at the bottom. That's very interesting. That's kind of how a lot of jobs are broken down. So I thought that was very interesting. You could be going to war, for 20, 30 years, and then some new kid out of college comes in and takes a spot. All right, you go next slide, Andrew. All right, so then they got the rankings. You have different military decorations, different ribbons. The Army awards 70 decorations for participating in specific services, attaining high marks in various training exercises, and for many other actions done while serving the Army. One example is the Prisoner of the War Medal. These are awarded to those who have been captured and detained by an enemy. It is a way to recognize the sacrifice of their personal freedom for their country. Another one is the Medal of Honor. This is the highest award given in the United States Armed Forces and represents heroism that goes above and beyond the call of duty. And another point I found interesting, kind of going back to what Andrew was saying, was the different breakdown of the Army. It's just interesting how they have the breakdown between the rankings, and how Andrew was going about how the different business aspects of the Army, and how they get, they have assets, they have multiple functions, diverse workforce, they get audited. So it's like, they smell like a business, it tastes like a business, but they claim it's not. So I just thought that was interesting. But yeah, that's my part.
Okay, this is Cassandra. This is the next part that I'll be working on is when. I'm actually here in Virginia, one of the first places where the colonial military started, the first landing of the first start of the military, I guess you would say. So in this photo here is, I don't know if we can zoom in to see it better, but it says on here in 1619, in 1610, following the starving time, Jamestown's early settlers founded new homes on Hampton's fertile fields, establishing the oldest continuous English specializing settlement in America.
English speaking.
English speaking, I'm sorry. Okay, you can go to the next screen. And so on the back of that go to one more screen, Drew. Okay, so this is on the back of that same monument. And so while I was here, I was trying to do as much research as I could, to find as much information based on this information. So it says on this one that near here, the English landed April 30th, 1607. Before going to Jamestown, they were welcomed by the I'm trying to pronounce this correctly, Kanalkalan Indians with their native religious ceremonies, dancing and feasting. So I thought that was interesting that they said that they were welcome, because in less than a year times later, everything kind of flipped and changed, and they turned on the ones that were so-called welcoming them to help them out. Okay, you can go to the next slide. So this is some interesting information that I found doing this research. And I got this from a book that I found. It's entitled The Jews and Muslims in British Colonial America. And also from a video from Camario Ahu. He did a really excellent job, and I've left that in the description. I can also put it in the chat, so you can go back and watch that video. But from this, from the book, it talks about how, as most of us have learned from elementary school, that our country was founded by a group of brave white, largely British Christians. However, there have been some other interpretations of what actually happened, and that included the contributions from other Africans and Indigenous Americans. But the basic premise has persisted that this groundbreaking study, this is from the book, fundamentally challenges the traditional national storyline, which I feel myself personally, it needs to be challenged because it's all from one perspective and not including the others. So in this book, and the book was written by Elizabeth Hirschman and Daniel Yates. I think it'll be a good read if I think that there's a PDF file online that you can pull up and read that. It's got really a lot of good information in there. So it says that many of the initial colonists were actually Sephardic Jews, Muslims, Moorish Muslim ancestry. And the supporting references include historical writings from ship manifestations, wills, land grants, DNA test results, genealogies, and the settlers list that provided for the first time the Spanish, Hebrew, Arabic, and Jewish origins of more than 5,000 surnames. And the majority of those were widely assumed to be British. So I thought that was interesting. All right. Okay, and this is just a picture that I took while I was coming into the visitor center for going into Jamestown, Yorktown, and Williamsburg. You can go to the next slide. And here it has just shows how close the areas are. And just giving basic information about the area. You can go to the next slide. So it says that the community was started in 1774 for Williamsburg, the capital of the English colony of Virginia. Patriot leaders, tradespeople, shopkeepers, freed and enslaved African Virginians. And I note that they keep noting so-called African slaves, but the research that I've pulled up from other research that I've been doing in my own family history were that the indigenous Indians were actually so-called Black people. And I'm here in Hampton and I see it all over. So that's just a whole, like the book Jews and Muslims in the British colonial. That's one of the things that they tap into as well. You can go to the next slide. And this is one of the photos that I had pulled up as well, just to show that these were indigenous. So let me get to the when, how the military actually started. It actually started with, you can go to the next slide. I'm sorry, Andrew. It started with the militia versus the Minutemen. It actually started with the militia and then later changed into the Minutemen. And the differences are the two is that the militia protected their towns, and it could be any man that was willing to fight, and they usually stayed in their town or their location. The Minutemen were an elite force that fought for any town. They were handpicked, and they were readily mobile, so just ready to go on the spot. Let's see. And so the colonial origins of the United States militia, the vision of an American militia goes back even before the United States Constitution or the founding of the United States. In most states in colonial America, all able-bodied men were considered to be a part of the militia, though which the individual towns and cities could provide for common defense. A militia is explicitly mentioned in the United States Constitution prior to the Bill of Rights, Article 1, Section 8, drafted around the same time as the founding of the Springfield Armory. After the Revolutionary War, all three continental forces disbanded, but Congress decided to establish a permanent military, which consisted of the Army, the Navy, the Marines, and followed by the Coast Guard, which started as a service for the Treasury Department. once the first well, that was way back over, and that source is from oldest.org. You can look that up there. And the history of the United States Army says that it began in 1775 from its formation, and that went from, like I mentioned before, the militia, the Minutemen, and there was one other term that was used, and forgive me because I don't remember what the name of that title was, guard picking, something like that. But in 1775, from its formation, the United States Army has been the primary land-based part of the United States Armed Forces. The Army's main responsibility has been in fighting land battles and military occupation. The Corps of Engineers also has a major role in controlling rivers inside the United States. The Continental Army was founded in response to a need for professional soldiers in the American Revolutionary War to fight the invading British until the 1940s, and the Army was relatively small in peacetime. And then that's all I have. And that is from our research at yahoo.com. And I'm passing the baton.
All right. So Andrew, you can put the slide on the video. I'm just gonna say this quick piece, and then you don't have to play it yet, not yet. All right. So where did the militia begin? So in many countries, the militia is of ancient origin. Macedonia under Philip II had a militia of clansmen in border regions who were called to arms to repel invaders. Among the Anglo-Saxon peoples of early medieval Europe, every able-bodied free male was required to give military service. In colonial America, the militia was the only defense against so-called hostile Indians. And this source is from Britannica. So it seems the militia has been used as a defense mechanism. And this shouldn't be a surprise because even Tony said this planet overall is a military operation. But what is so valuable that such a thing needs to exist? And is it really a defense mechanism or an operation that enforces? So the next audio will be of Dr. Blair and Dick Gregory expounding upon the militia. All right, go ahead, Andrew.
The wars that they want you to fight now are only to stop you from ascending. They're giving young men and women at the cream of their life, 17 to 30, 34 shots before they can come back. And if they come back, you don't want them.
All these secret tunnels and all this secret stuff that's built. We got a train underground for 20 years, runs from California to New York in 48 minutes. We have a train system underground that goes from New York to France underwater.
All right, that is it. And I put a picture that had a question before Dick Gregory spoke, and it was like, where is the army bases located, and are they underground? So yeah, that's my part. So should be you, Corey.
Yes, sir, it is. Andrew, could you go back to the beginning slide of my section, please? The next one, please. Right where the soldiers are, right before the slide before that. That's correct. Okay. Good afternoon. My name is Corey, and I've been tasked with answering the questions of why and how when considering the U.S. Army. The first question, why, arose to why do people join the Army? Here is a few list of reasons why people join the Army. The first reason is to serve their country. I can recall after the September 11th attack on U.S. soil, a lot of people felt an overwhelming sensation to join the military. One person in particular was my oldest brother. Although he did not follow through with this notion, he was hell-bent on serving his country. The reason why people join the Army also, another reason why people join the Army is also to learn new trades or skills.
to travel in honor of a family member and to obtain citizenship faster. And the way they obtain citizenship faster, if they have a green card, they can fast track the process to citizenship. Green card resident holders have to wait years to apply for U.S. citizenship, but the citizenship process is faster if for armed force members.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
I'm doing my part.
Service guarantees citizenship.
I also had the privilege of talking to a recent Army recruit, or enlisted soldier. He's been in the Army for almost 8 months. He's a private first class. His name is Andre. And I asked him, what name some of the reasons why, what was the main reason why he joined the U.S. Army? And he said that one of the main reasons he joined because of the GI Bill. And the GI Bill, if you're looking to get an education, it can pay for your education, if not all, or your tuition and fees for all public universities and colleges, and a monthly housing allowance for those that have at least 9 days of service. And they've been doing this since September 11th, 2001. I also asked him if with any cons of joining the Army. He stated sleep deprived and a lot of physical and mental challenges. More mental than physical. Side note, he played high school football and obtained a scholarship to play football in college. And he stated that the Army is way harder than playing football. Another question I asked was, how has the Army brainwashed him in any way? He stated that they did not brainwash him, but rather the Army belittles you for about 10 weeks. When they break you down mentally, then they build you back up in the Army's image. This brings me to another question. After I talked to him, we talked on in depth on a couple of other things, but this brings me to another question on how. How does the Army recruit soldiers? One particular way that I found that is very interesting is the Army has been using an online multiplayer video game called American Army as a recruitment tool with some success. This brings to mind the rise of popular first-person shooter games like the Call of Duty series. Another recruiting tool that has become popular is the Army will become part of the community in which they are trying to recruit. Next slide, Mr. Andrew. How is the Army currently doing with its recruitment of new soldiers? The Army recruiting goal is around 60,000 new soldiers per year. As in 2020, they have only recruited 20,000 new troops. This trend is projected to be on the decline in the next coming years, about as much as 40,000 new troops per year. So one of the questions that also came up was how many troops are in the Army. And this 2008 chart that I have, the Army is made up of 35. The Army makes up 35% of the U.S. military, which is around 480,000 troops in the Army. Next slide. Now, in 2018, the average age of majority of active duty commissioned officers in the enlisted Army is around 25 to 35 years of age. Next slide. Next slide. On this particular chart in 2018, the race and ethnicity of enlisted recruits is broken down here. Hispanic is considered to be an ethnicity, not a race, which overlaps with racial categories in all services. Minority representation in all services, minority representation is higher among female recruits than other male recruits among Army recruits. The Black population of women is definitely higher than the civilian labor force. But most of the part of the Army, this chart shows you that the civilian labor force mirrors the Army labor force. So on the top half of the chart, you have You have the on the left hand you have the white, the male, and on the left hand you have the male, and the right hand you have the female. Now the top half of the chart, which is the civilian labor force, 18 to 44, you have the white, black, Asian, and Hispanic. So on the white, it represents it pretty much coincides with what the Army shows also. And the black, you can see the female portion of the Army is significantly higher than the civilian labor force. The Asian is pretty much mirror image, and the Hispanic is more leaning towards the women. Next slide. How is the Army demographics in 2020 breakdown? It consists of 85% male and 15% female. 80% enlisted officers and 80% enlisted, 20% are officers. And over 80% have high school diplomas or GEDs. And around 52% of the Army is considered to be white, with 17% of the Army members coming from one state, which is Texas. The current total of troops in the Army is 485,000. The regular Army has 336,000. I'm sorry, next slide. I apologize. Next slide. Okay. The current is 485,000 regular troops and 336,000 in the National Guard and 189,000 in Army Reserves. That gives the Army a total number of troops over 1 million troops. Another question that arose is how many U.S. bases are located in the United States and around the world. There are 59 Army bases located in the United States, but some of these bases are joint or shared with other military branches. The state with the most Army bases is Virginia. It has 9. And the other states that come in the second that have the most bases are Texas and Louisiana. They both have 5. There are 18 Army bases located overseas. The country that has the most Army bases is Germany with 8. Coming in second is Korea with 4. The total number of combined Army bases globally is 77. Another question arose while I was looking at this is how many wars have the U.S. been involved in the list of wars and rebellions involved in the United States Army is currently 107 wars, 3 which are ongoing. Those 3 ongoing wars are Yemen, Syria, and Somalia. Next slide. So that brings us to a question of how much does the U.S. spend on Army defense? In 1996, the Army spent, or the Army and the U.S., the Army and the military are when you do a lot of research on it, it's kind of using the same term. So this graph shows in 1996 that the Army or the military budget was around $260 billion. Next slide. As opposed to the budget for 2020, it was roughly $778 billion. The Army budget alone was around $12.3 billion annually, with an additional $27.8 billion for readiness and deployment. The annual U.S. military budget is more than 11 countries combined. These countries include China, Russia, Japan, France, India, Germany, just to name a few. Next slide. Also, I also asked how the psychological operations or PSYOPs play a role in the Army or being used in the Army. PSYOPs are defined as planning psychological activities using methods of communications and other means directed to improve audiences in order to influence perceptions, attitudes, and behaviors affecting the achievements of political and military objectives. The symbiotic relationship between PSYOPs and the occult is fully personified by an important controversial figure, Michael Aquino. Michael Aquino joined the U.S. Army in 1968, where he became an officer specializing in psychological warfare, and later a lieutenant colonel in the military intelligence. As Aquino climbed the ranks of the U.S. military, he also climbed another organization ranks, the Church of Satan. Next slide. In the 1980s, as a PSYOP research and analysis team lead, Aquino co-authored Mind Wars, an internal U.S. Army paper about the future of psychological operations. In this paper, it goes into the MK Ultra experience. Aquino stated that ELF, extra low frequencies, can be used in conjunction with media broadcasts to control one's behavior. It is possible that the fourth PSYOP group is focused on and first elite group has been controlling the unprecedented.
Corey, I'm not sure if you're kind of breaking up quite a bit, Corey. So if you're talking even right now, we can't hear anything you're saying. If you're still talking, we can't hear anything you're saying, Corey.
It says he left the
I
meeting.
just sent
I
him
think
a
he's
text.
Okay, let's give him a moment to come back. Are you all enjoying this information thus far? You all have been, from my angle, you all have been very informative. This has been very enjoyable, even seeing the different angles that each one of you all have taken. So, of course, you don't have to do things very like sterile. Many of you kind of just went about your own way in your research and so on and so forth, and that's absolutely fantastic. You know, and I'm actually very happy that you did take the liberty to do that. All right. And so you all brought up some really good questions. You all see you, of course, Cassandra, you even went out and took pictures and stuff because you're in the area. Why not? Right. You know, if they're there, you know, which shows your bravery. Because many people
And I asked questions too. I'll wait for Corey to come back on, but oh, here he is.
I do apologize. I just pulled up. So, okay, what part did I cut out on? I apologize, y'all.
You got into MK Ultra, and then from that point, you started to get into it, and it started to break all up at that point.
Okay, so I'll just go over this part here. Michael stated that ELF, extra low frequencies, can be used in conjunction with media broadcasts to control one's behavior. Okay, ELF. Okay, so it is possible that the fourth PSYOP group is focused on foreign adversaries. Psychological warfare is currently being used by all kinds of state and non-state actors in the 21st century. Globally, its forces control mass media and political parties. This powerful elite group has been conducting an unprecedented mind wars attacks on the population, culture, and institutions. It's happening right before our eyes. Next slide. The world is a stage with a lot of actors, and these are some of the different PSYOPs that came up. It's just the four right and the four left. Just pretty much, we all know these particular characters. So this next slide. This brings us to the last question. How will the army of the future look? When doing this research, I found the Training and Doctrine Command, the TRADOC, state that between 2030 and 2050, there will be significant changes which will ultimately change the characteristics of warfare. The TRADOC is watching 12 trends as it looks for the future. These 12 trends are big data power generation, storage capabilities, space collective intelligence technology, engineering and manufacturing, climate change, and and resources, artificial intelligence, human computer interaction, demographics and urbanization, increasing levels of human performance. In my opinion, the future of warfare will look like the book series, The Forever War. Next slide. That's the end. You can play the last slide. You can just put it on there.
Okay.
All right. That's it.
Okay, so first I just want to say, for the first team, which was Team 3, Army, fantastic job. You all, again, took the liberty with your own inquisitive minds to go into angles that some people might not have thought to even go in, right? You didn't keep it just sterile, okay? You thought, kind of even went metaphysical, even though you heard me all mention many times, everything is metaphysical. Okay? The entire reality around us is metaphysical. So everything then that comes from that is metaphysical. But for most people, they consider some of these things just completely third dimensional, but you went more esoteric with it and so on and so forth. That's absolutely fantastic. Again, a hand clap to all of you. Also, Cassandra, the fact that you directly even went out in these times, the one thing that I'm noticing personally is that it's almost people have become more and more distant from nature, or just distant from going outside. Other than going to work kind of thing, they don't really go out and being entertained per se. They wouldn't necessarily go and do what you did, okay? And especially even talking to people. Huh, like I know you said you just talked to somebody. Ed told me a few days ago that he when their portion does come up, it's going to be interesting because he did some interviewing as well. Even though we're going to be working on some things like that in the future, for some of you all to take upon yourself to do that now is absolutely fantastic. And it shows that collectively, with the research on the different topics we're going to be doing, it will be absolutely phenomenal. Okay, I'm sitting here, again, even though some of the stuff I did know, a lot of it I also did not know. Okay, and it was fascinating to hear what you all were, the way your minds work and the angles that you went. So my hand clap to you, you all on Team 3, and all of you, even the previous sessions we've done so far, for the way that you all are doing things. But take note, everyone. So if you did make it more sterile, I'm sure it's still going to be good information, but you don't have to. You have the liberty. You just want it to be thorough. You wanted to, if you're going to go at kind of a, let's say, a more esoteric angle with it, then just make sure that we are able to follow you, okay, in that. And that's the reason why I don't want to go too esoteric right now, just because it could get kind of way into the spooky zone, and then it leaves everything up for interpretation. All right. So if you do that, just make sure we can follow you and make sure it has some tangible, so it has some tethers back to the third dimensional world, right? So we could see and bring it back and see where that comes from and so on and so forth. So that's for you all who will be presenting in the future. So again, hand clap to all of you all.
Tony, can I add just one real quick thing?
Sure.
Corey had a picture of a star fort, and what I noticed here in the area all the way around Virginia, they even the military both bases that they have right now, they're on star forts. A lot, most of them are on star forts. The older ones are,
Andrew,
yeah.
I was saying, Andrew, could you go back up to the picture of the fort? Right there, back, right, one day.
Yeah, there's one right here. There's several of them right here, and I was like, wow. And I even see the mounds and everything. And when I asked, when I went to one of the towns, Jamestown, and I asked, I showed them the picture of that monument, and I said, and you guys mentioned about the Indians that were welcomed, and I said, well, where's their section? And the guy looked at me like like, what are you talking about? I said, so there's no indigenous section, to show their side of the story, and they were like, no. So just wanted to add that in there.
Can I see the picture of that stone one more time of where the Indians were?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. When I was looking at it, I was thinking it maybe it looked like a obelisk, if I'm pronouncing it right.
That's the first thing that I thought too, and it pretty much is. I mean, the shape of it,
Mhm.
and the top that they have on there as that ship, supposedly the first ship that landed or whatever. But yeah, that's the first thing when I pulled up to it, I was like, that looks like an obelisk.
And there was two more slides. It looked like there was a fort with the Indians or something too. I would
Back
like
to
to
the one
see.
on the Jews and the Muslims. One slide, Andrew.
Yeah, I'm saying that looked like a pyramid. That's the shape of a pyramid. Now I don't.
It's also a starport too.
Yeah, I don't know. I know there's power and signs and symbols, and I don't know if that's a bigger meaning behind that right there. And there was another picture that you posted where it was Yorktown and Jamestown, and that was a sign of a pyramid too. It looked like it was in the water or something. Yeah,
right there.
You see the green. Yeah, it's like a pyramid sign there. So that's what I got from it. And I know, and maybe somebody knows something deeper than what I know.
I caught those same things. That's a good catch. I caught those very same things.
Mm-hmm.
My man's Chris G is on it. He being studious over there, brother. So just let me tell you all this. I'm not gonna get too much into this right now because we have the next presenters. But
right, everyone. Hope that you enjoyed part 2.1, which was over the Army. The next one will be coming to you in about a day or two, so stay tuned for that one. If you want to stay in touch with us, if you want to visit the store, you want to come to an event, you want to be part of potentially the research team when the next open call happens, if you just want to have a conversation, have a consultation, and so on and so forth, the links needed are in the description below. So hope everyone is doing well. Until the next time we speak, take care.